Welcome back to The Explainer. I need you to grab your forensic kit right now, because today, well, we're walking into an active, messy crime scene. We are officially opening case file, the failing high tariff question for the Cambridge AS and A-level Arabic language 8680, specifically paper 2. Now, if you know this paper, you know it demands that you tackle 2 Arabic passages on related themes, totaling up to about 750 words. But here's the crazy part. Massive amounts of marks are literally being stolen right out from under students' pens, and they don't even realize it's happening. So, we're going to look at the clues together to reconstruct the scene of the crime. I've actually brought in my top forensic team for this one. Agent Alex, who is absolutely obsessed with tracking down loose footprints and hard facts in the text, and Agent Sam, our resident expert at spotting vague, missing, theoretical arguments. Together, we are going to lock down this scene and secure your grade.
So, here is our investigation roadmap for today. We'll start with the incident report, move into analyzing the evidence, then cracking the code, followed by a live forensic workshop, and we'll wrap it all up with the final autopsy. All right, let's dive into this.
Look at the sheer weight of this statement on the screen. Agent Alex actually dug this quote up buried deep in our forensic archives from a senior examiner. It says, "The difference between a B and an A star in Arabic language often comes down to how well you understand paper 2. I really want you to let that sink in for a second. This isn't just, another test. It is quite literally the ultimate proving ground. The margins here are razor thin. If you don't understand the underlying mechanics of analyzing these related theme passages, you are essentially leaving an entire letter grade, maybe more, just sitting on the table. So consider this explainer your exclusive behind-the-scenes masterclass into exactly what the examiners are hunting for.
Okay, Section 1, the incident report. We need to identify the primary suspects behind these dense 750-word text blocks.
And here's exactly what our initial sweep uncovered. These are our primary suspects. Agent Sam pointed out these bizarre but super critical footprints left all over the crime scene. Basically, students are bleeding language and content marks for 3 main reasons. First, they completely fail to justify their points with direct textual evidence. It's like making an accusation in court with no proof. Second, instead of synthesizing the text, they are just lazily lifting phrases directly from the passages. And finally, the big one, a total lack of structural reasoning. It's a fatal flaw, really. They just jump straight to the conclusion without showing the examiner the analytical step-by-step process they took to get there.
Moving on to Section 2, analyzing the evidence. Let's do a forensic, line-by-line cross-examination under the UV light.
Now, this comparison brilliantly illustrates the core academic benchmark of the whole paper. Look at the right side, superficial breadth. This is just generic surface-level observations. This is exactly where the structural drop happens. Students misread the command words, panic, and then try to write a little bit about everything without actually analyzing the text deeply. Honestly, in the exam room, doing this is the academic equivalent of tampering with evidence. But look at the left side. This is what the framework actually demands, analytical depth. To hit those top-tier bands in your extended responses, your theoretical architecture has to be built on logical, structured reasoning, precise definitions, and you have to clearly identify causal relationships within the passages. Remember this, depth will absolutely always outrank breadth.
So the big question is, how do we actually guarantee that analytical depth? Well, Agent Sam managed to connect our findings directly to the core Cambridge learner attributes: confidence, responsibility, reflectiveness, innovation, and engagement. You see, the learning objectives for these 2 passages align perfectly with these exact traits. Top-tier candidates don't just passively sit there and read the 750 words. They actively interrogate them. They take full responsibility for their arguments. They innovate by connecting distinct, subtle ideas from passage 1 all the way over to passage 2. It requires a really aggressive, highly engaged mindset. But here is the absolute kicker. You have to prove that incredible engagement through a very strict linguistic framework. Our forensic checklist found that presentation relies on some intense, almost rigid conventions. Just like a police procedure, you have to follow the rules. As dictated by the syllabus, you absolutely need an appropriate register, proper paragraphing, accurate syntax, and grammatically correct transitions. If you don't explicitly build your argument with proper Arabic grammar and cohesive linking words, the examiner literally cannot award you those top language marks. You got to leave a clear, articulate paper trail. Okay, I'm going to pause the case file for just a quick second because this next part is critical. To make sure you never miss our weekly forensic investigation breakthroughs, and so you can always outsmart the examiners, you need to subscribe to Ace the Exams at the handle @AceTheExams right now. Make sure you turn on all those notifications. Seriously, don't let your grades become a cold case. Hit subscribe, and let's get back to the evidence. All right, Section 3, Cracking the Code. We're going to break down text interpretation so you can extract maximum points.
Now, if you get stuck mid-argument, here's the step-by-step extraction method that Agent Alex completely reverse-engineered from the syllabus. When you're interpreting text from related passages, it has to be a highly analytical process. You must extract both the explicit and the implicit meanings. You've got to analyze the author's tone, synthesize the arguments presented across both texts, and finally draw solid, evidence-based conclusions. We highly recommend using the Peel template. That's point, evidence, explanation, link to reconstruct your answer. This ensures that every single claim you make is backed up by undeniable proof directly from the source material.
Let's move into Section 4, the live forensic workshop. It's time for an interactive investigation.
Okay, we are setting a 60-second visual constraint on the lab clock right now. I want you to imagine you are staring at a completely flawed student essay snippet based on the two passages. Your challenge as lead investigator: locate the critical error that the student missed. Did they fail to spot the underlying bias in passage A? Did they totally miss the thematic link between the two texts? The very best candidates can spot these missing elements in under a minute because their eyes are specifically trained to look for logical gaps and missing evidence. Time is always ticking in the exam room, so your analytical reflexes need to be incredibly sharp.
Now, if you struggled with that 60-second challenge in your head, don't worry. Here is the exact mindset you need to cultivate to get faster. Agent Sam defined it perfectly as evaluative thinking. To crack the code and instantly spot those technical mistakes that kill a grade, you have to constantly question the author's assumptions. You have to consider the specific context of the passages, evaluate the biases, acknowledge any subtle nuance in the argument, and, as always, justify your interpretations with direct textual evidence. This, right here, this is exactly what separates superficial reading from a deep A-star analysis.
And to build on that mindset, Agent Alex revealed the ultimate step-by-step solution for securing those top marks. We call it evidence quality evaluation. Basically, whenever you pull a quote from those 750 words, you cannot, I repeat, cannot just accept it at face value. You must identify the limitations of that claim, pinpoint the assumptions the author has made, actively try to find alternative interpretations, and then critically evaluate how those alternatives actually affect the final conclusions. If you do this step by step in your answer, you're handing the examiner exactly what they are begging for.
Which brings us to one of the most powerful tools in our entire forensic kit: knowledge maps. Look, the syllabus makes it explicitly clear that the single most challenging aspect of Paper 2 is integrating knowledge seamlessly across different sections. You absolutely cannot treat these two passages in isolation. Top scorers create mental and even literal knowledge maps that connect related themes. Referencing these cross-topic connections, that acts as undeniable absolute DNA evidence of a top-tier candidate. It proves to the examiner that you haven't just read an isolated paragraph, you've mastered the entire landscape of the text.
Finally, we've reached Section 5, the final autopsy. We are pulling out the official principal examiner reports for this one. Agent Sam painstakingly combed through the archives and pulled out the 3 most fatal mark-stealing mistakes cited directly by the examiners themselves. Pay close attention. First, students constantly confuse cause and effect in their reasoning. Second, they are lifting whole sentences directly from the text instead of using their own words, which entirely ruins their language marks. And third, their answers are simply not specific to the context provided in the passages. You need to aggressively guard your paper against these 3 traps. If you make these mistakes, you are essentially bagging up your marks and handing them right back to Cambridge. I really want to flash a massive red warning light on this next point. Examiner alert. This is the starkest, most critical finding from our entire investigation today. The classic, and I mean absolute most common mistake, is providing generic answers that are not specific to the question context. Please do not memorize a pre-written essay and try to forcefully shove it onto the page. Always link every single point you make directly to the specific 750-word scenario you're analyzing. I'll say it again. Superficial breadth will fail, but contextualized analytical depth will win every single time.
So my final question to you as we close this case file is this: how will you link your next answer to the context? I want you to take the forensic exam protection checklist we built today and use it. justify your points with textual evidence, prioritize depth over breadth, rigorously evaluate your text quality, and whatever you do, never write generic answers. Remember, passing this paper requires a true examiner's mindset. Now, if you're ready to implement these tactics, I want you to command the comment section below right now, drop your current level and your target grade. And hey, before you head back to the lab to practice those past paper questions, make sure you hit that subscribe button for Ace the Exams at @AceTheExams and enable your notifications. Case closed for today. We will see you in the next explainer.